Hi guys, Vince here. I wanted to start a new video series on some of the biggest mistakes that we make because some of these mistakes can really bog down our playing strength and really leave us frustrated trying to figure out what went wrong. So if we can identify some of these mistakes and then correct them, then I think that our playing strength will significantly improve. So let's dive right into this. The first thing that we want to take a look at is anytime that we make a move, we're going to gain some squares, but we're also going to give up others. We're going to lose control of old squares. And this is something that you'd think we'd notice, but we are normally doing a bad job of it, myself included, when I first started playing chess. So we have this first example on the board. It seems like white can win a pawn on b6 because it's only guarded twice, and it seems like it's attacked 3 times. So naturally white will rush ahead and capture, capture, capture. But at this point, white will have made a mistake by capturing on b6 because it turns out that white is going to have to give up some squares that they need to control. If you'll take a look at this white king, there are 3 pawns right here, so there is potential for white to be back rank checkmated. So if we imagine this black knight captures this bishop and then white recaptures, if I give you just a second, could you tell me which square white gave up that they needed to retain control of? That's right, the square A1 will now be open and white will get checkmated on the back rank. So in this case, black captures the bishop, then white would just sort of have to maybe push their pawn up to h3 and let black get away with their knight, because if they do indeed capture this knight back, then we'll see that the a1 square they gave up control of, so now white is just going to be checkmated in 2 moves and lose the rest of their pieces. So that's not going to be very fun if we're white. So every time, especially before we even make our move, and especially if our pieces are already under an attack, we need to take a look and see, if I move this piece, am I going to lose control of some squares that I need to retain control of? Okay, so let's take a look at our other example of this video. So we want to take a look at a game in the Vienna opening, and this will be the Frankenstein Dracula variation. It's a fun one. So it starts off with pawn to e4, pawn to e5, knight up to c3, knight up to f6, and bishop c4. Now if you're black, could you find a tricky move that you could play? I'll let you pause the video and see if you can find it. Okay, so black has this tricky move. They can try to play for a center fork trick. If knight captures on e4 and knight just goes ahead and captures back on e4, then not only has white set up their pieces where they could be forked, the knight, which was on c3, also made a move, so they lost control of some squares, including d5. So now black can push their own pawn to d5 and gain this fork. Whereas last move they could not, because white controlled this square twice and it was only guarded 1 time. So that's the reason why that this will now work. And white has nothing better to do than bishop capture, queen capture, and then white isn't necessarily losing the game, but black has a very comfortable position. So we need to be aware of this trick. It's a very common trick. But back to the game at hand. In this case, white can play an even trickier response to black's trick. So a trick within a trick. If you had the white pieces and you know this opening, what would you play? Well, if you said queen h5, you'd be right. This is the main move to try to give black as many chances to mess up as possible. So why not give our opponent that chance? Queen up to h5. You can see that the threat is queen to f7 checkmate. So black needs to do something about this, as well as their hanging knight on e4. So black will bring their knight back to d6. And we always have to ask ourselves, why did my opponent play this move? Well, they did guard the f7, but they are also attacking our bishop. So then we would play our bishop back to b3. And here black shouldn't be greedy. They should return this pawn on e5 that's unguarded by playing bishop over to e7. And that will help them get castled quickly, and they should be doing okay here. But in this case, black decided to play knight to c6, being a greedy chess player. And usually this is, I would recommend that we should be as greedy as possible, as long as we can get away with it. In this case, it seems like white has too many good moves to follow up here. So again, this video is all about anytime we move a piece, we're going to gain some squares, but we're going to give up others as well. We're going to give up some old squares that we formerly had control of. So if I let you pause the video, what do you think white would do here? They have kind of a surprising move. Okay, if you found knight up to b5, then you'd be correct, because black cannot capture this knight, otherwise they'd be giving up control of squares that they need. So even though this knight is undefended and hanging, it is not possible for black to capture this knight on the pain of checkmate. So in this case, black needs to do something about this checkmate threat, so they're going to play their pawn up to g6. After pawn to g6, then white needs to do something about their queen. Therefore, queen to f3 should be played, and they're going to renew this threat on f7. So black will play their pawn up to f5, and yet again, white will renew this threat, queen up to d5. Okay, so black is in a pickle because they have to guard f7 yet again. If black plays a silly move like perhaps pawn up to a6, then white will simply just capture with a check. If black just recaptures, doesn't matter bishop or pawn recapture on d6, then white will again have this checkmate. So black needs to come up with a good move here, and there's not really many good moves. If black uses their queen to try to guard the f7 square, so say for example we have queen over to f6, then remember our mistake. Anytime that we move a piece, we're going to gain some squares, but we give up others. So what is the square that black will be giving up? If you said the c7 square, then you're right. So in this case, black can't actually avoid it. They must play either queen to e7 or queen to f6 to avoid a lot of material loss, but they're still going to lose some material. Here, then knight to c7, check, king over to d8, and then white will snap up this rook, and it won't be a winning game, but white will certainly have an advantage here. So that's sort of our recap for the video. We want to make sure that anytime we make a move, we're going to at least look and see which squares we're going to give up. And if that's going to be a big problem for us, then we need to think of another move or think of some other way to solve the problem. Alright, so if you can, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, comment if there's something that you want me to go over, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye.